There is an explosive new documentary about the Duggar family from the popular TV show 19 Kids and Counting and the cult that they were a part of. And it just so happens, y'all, that I was part of the same cult. Shiny Happy People is the name of the documentary, and it focuses primarily on the scandal that rocked the Duggar family when it came out that their oldest son, Josh Duggar, had been abusing minors for years. It's a great documentary. It's actually the #1 documentary on Prime Video right now. Very, very highly bingeable. I watched the whole thing straight through. Watching it did bring back a lot of pretty dark memories for me. And at one point, I broke down in tears. I don't cry, but this documentary at one point did bring me to tears. But I don't really think it adequately covers how extreme and extensive this cult truly was. And that's what I want to get into with y'all on this series about the Shiny Happy People documentary. And to do that, I brought my friend with me, Bryce, who is also a former member of the cult, so that we can just kind of talk about it. How you doing, man?
Former cult members, high five.
Yeah, dude. We've been through it, bro.
Oh my God.
We have been through it. You actually made a surprise celebrity guest appearance in the documentary.
I'm having my lawyer contact. I'm waiting for the check.
Your face popped up in this documentary. As a matter of fact, I think we've got a picture of it, Josh. Can you pull up that picture of my buddy Bryce here? Yeah, you were
in the day.
I mean, it was brief, but you were on it.
Oh yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
There he is.
Not the weird guy in front. The weird guy in the middle.
Yeah, the weird guy right in the middle. Your face is a little bit obscured, but that's definitely you. Also, don't have a beard in this picture.
No, that was definitely pre-beard.
Yeah, this is a very special picture of you.
Yeah.
Because without the beard, you look like you do some things.
I like how you're just like, oh, no beard. That's the big difference here. It's not that I'm half the man in that picture that I am today, but okay, I appreciate that.
Let's go with the beard. Yeah. So, what did you think of the documentary, Bryce?
It's a very well crafted documentary. I thought it was going to be maybe too much focus on the Duggars, which
it did focus a lot on them. That was the primary thrust. Yeah,
it needed to bring the people in that are aware of all of this that's going on. I mean, they're the reason it's in the limelight.
Absolutely. I mean, 19 Kids and Counting was a juggernaut on TLC. Huge show,
and we knew nothing about it.
No, because we didn't have TVs growing up.
Well, we didn't have cable, but it was like after our time.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it started, I think, while we were still in.
I think so too, but it wasn't what it was. Like they showed footage of their early stuff.
Right.
And I was right. I didn't even know it looked like that back then.
Because they'd done. It wasn't a TV show at first. It was just like these limited series that they were putting out on Discovery Channel.
Exactly.
And then it turned into the series.
Well, it wasn't even Discovery Channel. It was that other channel, and it was like, we're going to show you open surgery. And here's some people with a lot of babies.
Yeah. Here's this massive family.
Yeah.
That's real weird, and they all wear dresses. Yes,
not all, but
all the women wore dresses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you and I actually met after I was already out of the cult.
Yes.
But
technically, I was out too.
Right.
We were both out, but our brains were still
very much programmed to
dialed
cult behavior. Yeah, well, and I was still affiliated with some organizations that were closely tied to the cult.
Oh, yes.
As well. Yeah, and that's kind of how you and I met.
Yeah, I needed friends that wouldn't need me to explain all of the things that we grew up with. It's like, we're all none of us have seen, RoboCop, so it's just good.
RoboCop,
right?
yeah, I mean, what are you if you haven't seen RoboCop?
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that is important, right? And that's why we connected, because we both had this shared experience that no one else is really going to understand. Because growing up the way that we did, it was crazy, but it was all we knew. And so to us, it didn't seem crazy, but to any outsider, they'd just be like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Wait, you grew up how?
Yeah. People even at a young age when we were in it, we were the kids
Right.
talking to adults, which has always been something that they held up as like, oh, look at our kids can just speak
Look
to
how
any
mature
adult.
they
They're
are.
mature.
Yeah.
And we're over there trying to give them an explanation of, it's like, oh, no, we're homeschooled, but, we're blah, blah, blah. And like, it's like we were trained as our own PR for our parents.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big part of the cult, right? Is making sure that the kids were evangelists for the cult.
Well, you also didn't want to bring shame.
That's true.
That
That's
was a big, guilt and shame to
very Japanese vibe, actually. Don't want to bring shame to the family. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, you have to fall on your sword.
Well, you would have to do something, and it wasn't going to be fun. Not that there was much fun, but
Yeah, you go to the prayer room is what you
God.
do. Yeah,
that was you.
That was me.
I was totally in line.
Yeah. You were actually kind of a model citizen of this cult, and I can't wait to get into some of that stuff because there's just so much, and that's what I felt like the documentary didn't really address. They didn't dive very deep into the culture of the cult.
Yeah.
Like they talked a lot about Bill Gothard. They talked a lot about the Duggars, some of the rules. They did feature a lot of ex-cult members, which we'll talk about that as well. But I never thought really what they focused on was the abuse.
Yes.
Which was rampant. It really was rampant, truly. And it was horrifying. But there's so much more to be uncovered about this cult. Bill Gothard is the guy.
Yeah.
Right? He's the guy that started the cult. Initially, it was known as the Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the old school.
The old school name. And he started doing these seminars in the 1970s, I believe. It goes that far back. I mean, we're talking about 50 years ago when he initially did this. So it was initially called the Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts, transitioned into the Institute in Basic Life Principles, and they were doing these seminars and outreach programs all over the country and actually all over the world as well.
And just so that everybody understands, when we say a seminar, if you're thinking like, oh, you show up on a Tuesday night for a couple hours and you go home. No. This is a much harder sell. You are signing up for a week.
Yeah.
Really 6 days, if I remember correctly.
Of straight through seminars.
So it's every night, like 3 hours. And then on Saturdays, like it's all day on Saturday. So, and you pay money. Everybody has to pay money. Get their little booklet.
And it's expensive too.
Yes.
It's very expensive. I mean, a lot of families struggled to be able to pay to go to these seminars, but they were so loyal to Bill Gothard that, I mean, they would sacrifice anything to be at his seminars.
Like their children.
That too, yeah. So it's this outreach program that he had, and it was aimed at fundamental Christians and ultimately the homeschool groups.
Yes.
Right? Homeschoolers. It was a mass. I don't think people understand how big a part of the homeschool movement IBLP was.
Well, back in the day, it wasn't even legal
to homeschool. I know. Yeah.
I was illegal until like the last 4 years it had become legal or something.
That's a really good point, because for a long time that was considered truancy from school. And they could take you away from your parents. They could arrest your parents.
Oh, yeah. We were not allowed to play in the front lawn during school hours.
Correct. And you had to go to the store after normal school hours so no one would question, hey, why are these kids not in school?
Yeah.
But yeah, so IBLP was just a huge part of this movement. And the homeschool movement really started like in the 1980s. But I think the cult itself, the seminars were in their heyday in like the 70s and 80s.
They really were.
But the cult itself, I feel like was at its most powerful in the 90s and early 2000s.
Well, once they integrated the homeschool aspect, they got like a shot in the arm. Because I think it was probably kind of plateaued.
Right.
And then he's like, oh, let's do this. And people latched onto it. Because, one of the main things at the cult is, this whole principle of authority, this whole structure of authority.
Right.
Now, if you're a mother who's homeschooling your children, the main reason you're doing that, one of the main reasons, is so that you can have control over what your kids are taught. You're scared of what the public school system's going to teach them. So
exactly.
You're like, screw that. I'm going to teach them myself. Here comes a man that's like, oh, and if your children do anything against you, they are rebellious and evil and witches.
And here's how to prevent that, right?
And here's
a lot of times
way to be.
The parental their motives were good, right?
Yes. 100%.
They were doing the best that they could with what they had, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to protect their kids from evil influences, right?
Yeah.
They didn't want their kids to end up, I don't know, drug addicts or whatever, even though a lot of us ended up that way. Anyways.
I'm still waiting on that part of my life. I haven't
You're
quite
waiting for
made
the
it.
addiction part?
Yeah.
You've still got a little ways
I got
to go.
some time.
Yeah. So they had the best intentions, I think, a lot of times.
Yes.
Not always, but at least my parents did. My parents had great intentions. And here was a guy coming along validating all the things that they already believed and putting it into a seminar and a program that made a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, no, it's my mom, they all thought they were doing the right thing. This guy came along and every single thing he said, you have to understand, he would point it to a specific scripture verse.
Yes.
Thus, everything was biblical.
Correct.
And someone like our parents were like, oh, fantastic. I've wanted to do this
is
anyway.
great. Yeah.
I wanted my kids to really be more obedient than they are. And now this guy is saying that God is telling us that, yes, that's exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, it was the validation that they needed.
Exactly. So it didn't take much for people to sign up.
No, and it exploded.
Yeah.
It absolutely exploded. And so ultimately, Gothard, he writes this curriculum, a homeschool curriculum, and called it the Advanced Training Institute, or ATI.
He loved these acronyms.
Oh, yeah, big acronym guy, Bill Gothard. Yeah.
So much.
And I mean, honestly, like a lot of the symbolism and stuff that he used was very fascist in nature. Do you agree with that? Like, he loved the Eagles.
Yeah,
he loved
I
red
would say
carpets.
Less fascist, more nationalist, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the red carpet.
It was weird.
For somebody that claimed to live very modestly,
right,
and who also promoted to being, a modest type, not flaunting wealth, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Every single facility had deep red carpets,
right,
that we all hated because we had to vacuum them.
Yeah. Every single training center. But yeah, it was an interesting dichotomy that he had.
Yeah.
Because like you said, on the one hand, he's talking about, you need to live conservative, modest life. Don't be lavish. Don't be showy, flashy. That's all ungodly, right?
Right.
But then on the other hand, he's zipping around on private jets with entourages with him everywhere he goes. It's interesting. So he writes this curriculum, and it's this Bible-based program designed for conservative Christian homeschool families.
Yes.
And that's what really took off. And the curriculum was packaged in these little things called wisdom booklets. Wisdom booklets. And this man, those were crazy in and of themselves, right? Because they represented these wisdom booklets to be all that you needed to get a full education.
Yep.
A kindergarten through high school education. All you got to do is go through these wisdom booklets one time a year.
Yeah.
And all of the wisdom booklets were based on Bible verses, specifically the Sermon on the Mount.
Well, it's like the Sermon on the Mount has 54 verses.
Yeah.
And there are 54 wisdom booklets. Because each wisdom booklet was one Bible verse.
Uh-huh. It was just the wildest thing. And really the level of education that these wisdom booklets were actually delivering was, laughable.
I can tell you, I remember one specific thing from, I don't remember what book it is, but in one of the wisdom booklets, and it was like 8 pages on how to properly prune trees and plants. And it has stuck in my head.
So your yard looks amazing.
Dude, if I had one, I walked through, I'm like, they need to cut those because that's, that'll make the tree grow better. That's the only thing I remember.
Yeah, most of it was based on developing character, right? Discipline, obedience, loyalty. Like, that's really what the wisdom booklets were pushing.
Yeah.
It wasn't, hey, you need to know about history and literature and math and science. No, none of that, especially not science. Holy hell. Can't be pushing science. That's typically not biblical. So yeah, it was more so pushing this fundamental Christian lifestyle.
Right. And the character, so the character quality thing was they latched onto that. It was something that they developed, and then they got a very big response for it. And they're like, oh, well, let's see what else we can do with this character quality thing. And so everybody knows when they're talking about character qualities, like, these are the character qualities that Christ exhibited.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then they had this whole, I forget how many it was. Like, it was like 50 character
qualities. It was a whole
It was
list
a
of
lot.
them. Yeah. And they always had like a little saying attached to them, and usually an example from the animal kingdom.
Yes,
loved animal analogies.
Oh my gosh,
it was just really weird. But Gothard, he was revered by members of IBLP, the Institute of Basic Life Principles. Everyone called him Mr. Gothard.
Absolutely,
everyone. I don't care how old or young you were. I don't care how rich or poor you were. You called him Mr. Gothard, and his extreme teachings on biblical adherence, large families, obedience to authority. I mean, that was the big one, right? The staying under your umbrella of authority.
Oh yeah.
Modesty, sexual purity. That all formed the basis of the cult. And the cult operated in training centers all over the world.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there were dozens of them.
It was crazy. I think at one point I remember when I wasn't just in the cult, I also worked for it at some point. But I was like, man, there's like 40 or 50 programs. Everything you could possibly imagine, from music foundation stuff to you're gonna learn to be a counselor to a law school. Yeah. Like, it got a little crazy there at the end.
Oh, it was pretty wild, because they had established their own university at one point. They had that pre-law program as well, which was not accredited, completely useless.
Well, in California.
Oh, it was accredited in California.
You could be certified to practice law in California, and then you would have to somehow get your full
figure it out if you wanted to practice anywhere else.
I don't know how law works. I'm not educated.
Yeah, but I mean, their whole thing was stay out of the secular world as much as possible and only associate with members of the cult and programs designed by the cult.
Yes.
And these training centers, they were really just compounds. That's really all it was. Josh, did you already show the picture of all the training centers that the cult had?
No, I've only showed up to here. I haven't shown her the training center.
Show that training center picture. Number 6. Oh, okay. So actually, not that one. That's the Little Rock Training Center. No, go back.
This one.
Yeah, number 6. Yeah, show that one. So that's just a few of the training centers. You've got the Indianapolis Training Center, Eagle Mountain, the Riverfront Character Inn. That was in Flint, Michigan. Gigantic hotel that was donated to IBLP by city officials, and that's how they got most of their training centers. They were just donated by city officials.
Or Hobby Lobby would purchase an old building and then sell it to them for $1 and get a big tax break.
Yeah, Hobby Lobby was their number one donor, David Green.
Yeah,
right.
And to be clear, these amazing training center buildings were absolutely unlivable when they were turned over to the Institute, and then were made livable by children,
by volunteer staff, largely comprised of children.
No, volunteer would mean that no money changed hands. But what happened is that our parents paid them for us to build these facilities.
Correct, because it was a training program,
apprenticeships, or
apprenticeships, intern, whatever you want to call it, right? And our parents would pay IBLP for us to go to these dilapidated training centers that they had acquired to essentially renovate them.
Yeah, it's a ministry opportunity.
They even bought a full-blown college campus in Big Sandy, Texas.
Yeah.
Like, it was massive, and it was a huge deal, like, even in the news. People were like, whoa, these guys just bought a college campus?
Yeah.
Crazy. They even had, I don't know if you ever went to this, Bryce, but they had an annual conference in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Sir, I was in the choir.
Oh, you were in the choir. Wow, dude.
I was there.
You were behind the scenes.
No. That was for the 4. I went 4 years.
Yeah.
In a row. Family vacation, guys. We're going to drive to Tennessee, and we're going to spend all of our time doing this stuff.
The Lord's work is what it was.
Honestly, I didn't mind it because I got to talk to girls from all over the country. So
that's true.
There were some upsides.
Yeah, I didn't. So you were part of the staff, and so you got special privileges.
Only 1 year. That was only 4 years as a family.
Okay.
And then I only went one time later on staff.
On your own. Okay.
And then I didn't. That was best because then I wasn't locked into any kind of schedule.
Yeah, you could.
I helped out here and there a couple of times.
And the rest of the time you were fraternizing.
I'm out.
And probably defrauding a lot of young women in Knoxville, Tennessee, which you should be ashamed of.
Oh, I am.
I hope you still experience shame and guilt about that.
I do.
But that Knoxville annual conference, seminar, whatever you want to call it, that was attended by over 40,000 people.
Yeah, the choir was like 10 or 15,000 of us.
God.
All singing that one song.
And they had it in a giant, I mean, we're talking about an arena.
Thompson Bowling Arena.
Yeah.
Where they do all their college basketball.
Yeah.
Packed
to the gills. I said 40,000. It was probably closer to like 60 or 70,000.
It was a lot. It was like they always said like 10,000 families. Okay, each one of these families would average 4 to 8 children.
Yeah,
not us. We were underachievers.
Well, yeah, and that was another one of the principles of the cult was have as many kids as you can. We are trying to populate the world with godly young people. Yep. Right, and that's one of the things that they talked about in Shiny Happy People, the documentary, is that really the goal was world domination. Yeah, and I agree with that 100%.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons.
You agree with world domination?
Well, obviously, as long as it's me doing the dominating.
Yeah.
And not anyone else. I'm starting my own cult, y'all.
Let's do it.
That's what's going to happen. But yeah, so they had these seminars, they had these conferences, they had these training centers, and it was just all over the world.
Yes.
It wasn't just the United States, and that's another thing that people don't really understand.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all over the United States, but they had training centers in Mexico. They had training centers in Russia, Australia, New Zealand, Ecuador, I think.
I don't know about Ecuador. And honestly, we need to find somebody that did the whole Moscow thing, because that is its own. The little bit I know here and there, it was a boat.
It was a boat?
Yes.
The training center in Moscow was a boat?
Yes.
I did not know that.
My understanding was it was not very warm.
Okay.
It was on the river in Moscow, not great conditions. I mean, we all know the Russians are amazing engineers.
Yeah.
And they build quality stuff. So, yeah, there was I believe it was some sort of giant hotel boat thing.
A flotilla?
Yeah.
How exciting is that?
He had a navy. Nobody knew.
Oh, yeah. Well, he had a whole paramilitary. Gothard had his own military, and that's one of the things that I'm going to dive pretty deep on as well in one of the episodes in the series.
To be clear, they did not train combat or guns or anything, but they were
weapons.
Still very, very disciplined.
They did train combat, though. I know that for a fact. Yeah, yeah, like basic hand-to-hand type combat.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't sign up.
Yeah, no, neither did I. But that was, if you were like a boy, a younger boy in the cult, that was the ultimate goal.
Yeah, but you know why?
Why?
You ever show up? You ever see what happens when those boys showed up at the training center?
Oh, in their uniforms. Women do love a man in uniform.
All of the girls at the training center would just lose their
just swooning.
Mind. Just
well, yeah, because the military, the paramilitary in the cult was basically like we looked at those guys like Navy SEALs.
Well, they memorized like an entire book of the Bible, and their hair was cut short, and they had their own CD.
And maybe they had abs. I mean, you couldn't see them because you got to stay covered up.
Well,
but
they definitely had the physical stuff down for sure.
Oh yeah, they were rock hard.
Much like you right now.
But one of the things I wanted to get into, Bryce, was just kind of like your experience growing up homeschooled and ultimately how your family got into the cult, because it's so drastically different for every person that I've talked to. Like, for instance, me, I was homeschooled my entire life. I never went to a public school, never went to a private school, but my parents didn't really join the cult until a little bit later. I think I was around like, I don't even remember, honestly, it was like 11 or 12, I think, is when they joined the cult. But what was, how did your parents get into homeschooling?
So I went to public school in kindergarten.
Wow, you sinner.
I know.
Wow, you were exposed, dude.
It's pretty much why I am the way I am today. So kindergarten. Now somebody there said something to my mother that you can't say this kind of thing to a mother like mine, where they were like, "Oh, once Brandon's here, he's ours. Once Bryce is here, he's ours."
There's that control.
And I'm like, she was like, "What? My baby?" And
oh no, you didn't.
So the next thing you know, we go to like a very tiny Christian school.
Okay.
And the curriculum they used was very easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I am one that loves to goof off.
Sure.
And I would goof off and play in my little cubicle all day.
And this was in like first grade, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But so you were being a kid.
Yeah. But but basically my sister and I would win all the awards, the academic awards, even though we were goofing off. So they were like, "Oh, this is too we'll homeschool. It's cheaper also."
Yeah.
So they did that. And then at some point we met another homeschool family that was like, "You should check this out."
And it was IBLP.
And my mother was like, oh, I went to that seminar when I was, in my 20s or whatever.
Oh, your mom had been to a seminar like before she ever had kids.
Yes.
So she had a very early exposure to IBLP and Bill Gothard.
Yes.
Interesting. I didn't know that, dude.
Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
She was like, oh, awesome. This was before the internet, so it's not like you could just find out what they're doing. So then they and we're young. I think I was like 10 maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure how old I was. And next thing you know, we're like, oh, we're doing this. And we're like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing.
It was the wisdom booklets?
Here we go. Wisdom booklets. And, we all had supplementary curriculum as well.
Yeah. Now, was your experience like, well, actually, no, because you still went to like a regular church, right?
That was the weird part. Like, so as we were saying earlier, like a lot of people got involved in the same way and for the same reasons. But the experiences that everybody had vastly different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Most of the people in this organization would go to a very tiny church made up of almost exclusively other Institute people.
Right.
Or Institute-leaning people. We went to like a First Baptist church.
Okay.
So we're like super conservative, and First Baptist church is not super
pretty
conservative.
loosey-goosey. Yeah.
It's, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun.
They have youth groups.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I had a pool table growing up in the church,
Wow, dude.
Played pool and foosball. It's great.
Unreal.
But I was also I could not relate to these. I mean, it was good that I was mixed in with these people.
You had some socialization. Yeah.
Right. I would watch the movies about what high school was like, and then I would go to church and I would get to be bullied by those high schoolers. And I got that full, I'm not kidding. I got the full experience. You
like, I saw this in that show I watched about getting being called all these names.
Exactly. You didn't get that experience, but I, sir, was bullied at church by my fellow Christians. It was great.
Wow.
Loved it.
See, okay, so for me, when my family first joined the cult, we started home churching, which is exactly what it sounds like. I was homeschooled, and then we also would have church at someone's home. It was my family and two other families, and we did that for, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years, I would say. Yeah, about 2 or 3 years we did this home church thing. And so the isolation there, or it realistically was insulation from any external influences. It was all people that thought exactly the same, that wanted the same thing, had the same goals, right? We were all homeschoolers. We were all in the cult. We went to church together. We did church together. And so we never really had any exposure to real life. And, we weren't allowed to watch TV. We didn't go to movies. The only thing that we had was like this tiny little 9-inch garage TV, with the antenna and everything. And my parents would hook that up to a VCR player, and we could watch these Christian movies.
The Christian movies.
The good old. You remember what was the one about the basketball player that was sponsored by Chick-fil-A? Pistol Pete Maravich.
That one.
Yeah, so that was one of the Christian movies that I watched. I don't even know how many times. Because it was one of the few that we had that was actually any good.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any exposure to the outside world for years. I would go to the conferences, I would go to the seminars, and so I would meet other people, but that also had the exact same ideology.
Right.
So yours was a little bit different, where you were experiencing other thoughts and opinions and people.
I got to be amongst the heathens at the First Baptist Church, which means I was around girls that were not in dresses all the time.
Oh, how tough was that for you, buddy?
A lot of prayers.
A lot of praying.
And then we had a TV at home. We still watched network TV.
Really?
We watched network TV. Every now and then we'd get like try cable for 2 weeks for free, and then my mother would like record every movie so that we would watch it later.
Yeah.
Of course, those are all edited, so the cuss words are not there, the sex scenes are not there, and all of that. And we watched movies and watched network TV and didn't talk about it when we went to the training center,
right? Yeah,
and other facilities. And now we were very hard on the music thing, which was a big deal.
Right.
No rock music or anything with a beat.
Well, that and I think that's an important distinction, because a lot of people would just think, oh, they weren't allowed to listen to secular rock music. No, we weren't even allowed to listen to Christian rock music. You could listen to hymns, gospel music, and classical music.
Yes.
Those were the categories, and that is what you were limited to.
She threw away my DC Talk tape, bro.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if
DC
my mom
Talk
knew
tape.
that one of my church friends let me listen to their DC Talk CD, oh, I would have been immediately excommunicated.
Yeah.
But
Amy
yeah, that's
Grant,
how serious it was.
Sandy Patty, get out.
Oh, well, Amy Grant was just problematic anyway because she got divorced.
Oh.
And that's a capital offense. I don't care how bad or toxic or dangerous your marriage is. That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
So some of the rules, right? Let's talk about that a little bit, because we've kind of addressed it. One of the things in the cult was that the women had to wear dresses.
Yes.
Because it was the only modest way for a woman to dress. You couldn't wear pants. You couldn't wear anything that showed any amount of skin at all, because if a woman wore something that was considered immodest, like a pair of blue jeans, that could be defrauding to young men.
Cause us to stumble and fall.
It would cause us to lust.
Yes.
Right. If I saw your kneecaps, that could send me straight to hell.
Straight to hell.
Yeah, exactly.
With all the other kneecap lovers. Special room.
I think they call them the kneaders.
It's very weird.
Yeah, it's an interesting kink.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was one of the big rules, right? And that, I think that's what, when you went out in public and people saw these groups of people just wearing dresses, and the men would wear khaki pants. Shirts were always tucked in, dude.
But we only did that when we were at those, my family only that at those facilities, at those events, because back home in Texas, we just dressed normal.
Oh, your family did?
Yeah.
See, mine didn't. My sister and my mom always wore dresses, ankle length skirts or dresses.
My sister could wear shorts to the youth whatever thing that we were doing, not on a Sunday.
Wow.
But like during a Bible study, Monday, whatever, shorts, jeans, whatever.
I thought you were a good person.
I know.
I didn't realize you were so evil.
Flipped the table completely. You were like, I thought I was the degenerate. He's never even been addicted to anything.
Did you, were you allowed to wear your shirt untucked?
Yeah.
Wow, I couldn't even do that.
But I mean, I'm untucked, wearing shorts and stuff, just casual. But
no.
I still put a suit on, at 12, going to church.
I specifically remember going on a homeschool field trip, and it was homeschool day at Six Flags, Houston, I believe it was. And I was so excited because we were going to be around all these people. I was going to get to talk to girls. I think I was like 13 or maybe 14 at this point, right? And I had an outfit ready to go. Cargo shorts, Adidas flip-flops, Adidas t-shirt, Adidas hat. Bro, I was...
Sleeves or no sleeves?
I was matched up. Oh, sleeve.
Okay.
Sleeve. Yeah, sleeve for sure.
You're not a whore.
But my plan was, I'm gonna wear this outfit. It's gonna go so hard. This fit is fire. And then my mom told me, you need to tuck your shirt in.
How old were you?
13, I think.
I never thought anything I was wearing was fire. It's like, this one's clean.
I was very conscious. Okay.
You were fashion forward.
I was. I mean, just like head to toe Adidas, dude. I was the coolest of the cool. And then my mom made me tuck my shirt into my shorts, and I looked like a friggin' nerd.
I wore a golf cap for years. The same beige, just golf cap,
Like a visor?
No, like a...
like a Peaky Blinders hat?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I was so cool. I thought that this is what put Brandon on the map. It was this hat. This is just like, this is my look, and this is my thing.
This is my thing, dude.
And then it got stolen in Mexico, and I cried.
Oh, got stolen in Mexico.
My dad was like, they took your shoes that we bought you. I was like, but my hat.
But my hat, though.
My hat. And he's like, those shoes.
I remember getting in trouble one time because I was wearing a puka shell necklace, and that was too worldly.
What? A what?
A puka shell necklace. Remember when those were popular? Like, you had the hemp with the shells, and it was like a thing? No? Okay.
What state was this?
This was in Texas.
Okay.
This is a big deal in Texas. But yeah, I got in trouble for wearing one of those because it was
Texas thing.
It was making me rebellious, according to my parents. And that was the capital crime in the cult, right? Is rebellion.
Well, rebellion, drawing attention, being immodest.
Right.
So what we're placing a lot of emphasis on any time that we were able to go out and like talk to girls.
Yeah.
So when I was living and working at the training center, if I got to sit next to my sister because it's my sister and we took care of each other. And then for a little while, I couldn't do that because other guys that were there would use that as an excuse to sit at the table
next to girls
and sit with girls at the table. It would usually be me and my sister and then a couple other siblings, you know, that we all lived and worked there. And so like, yeah, we're cool. And then this rando that's here for 2 months is like, I'm going to sit with the Bryce over here. It's gonna be, you know. We're like, no, bro, get out of here. You're killing it.
You're really killing the vibe, dude.
So it was a big deal. So I towed the line, man. Like I never stopped and talked to a girl in the hallway by myself. That will get you pulled into a room. You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. There was, you weren't supposed to talk to members of the opposite sex. You were supposed to keep a safe distance at all. We were social distancing before it was cool, guys.
Oh, for sure.
In the cult.
Oh, if they
We
had
were all
seen
about
this whole mask and the distance thing, they would have been like, yes.
This is great.
You know what?
We love this.
When they smile, they do draw men in. We should cover the smile.
Yeah.
We could tell by their eyes anyway.
That's right. Yeah, because they have the bright, shining eyes.
The bright, shining eyes.
That's one of the things. When I heard the name of the documentary was going to be Shiny Happy People, I was like, how perfect.
Plus, just the poster with the fake smiley face on it.
Yeah.
I was like, that is right on the money.
It's literally perfect because Gothard would always talk about bright, shining countenances.
Yeah.
Right?
You need to portray that you are happy regardless of you being happy.
Right.
So that you are portraying the right image for Christ.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we were always a testimony, right?
Always.
And we always wanted to point other people that looked at us or saw us to God, right? That was the big thing. So
they say, but if you really think hard and you look back at all of the stuff that they did, it's like, did they minister to anybody outside of the organization? Not so much.
No, not real. I mean, every now and then they would.
Every now and then, but for the size and the amount of facilities and the amount of money they had, like how much good could they have done?
Well, that's one of the things, dude, is I read that, and this was a while back, but in the early 2000s, IBLP was bringing in revenue of over $60 million per year. Per year, over $60 million.
Yeah, that's not so. He had a lot of curriculum.
Gothard did, yeah.
A lot. Okay,
yeah.
And when we say curriculum, if you're thinking that this is just like some thin paper with staples, no. These are full color, hardbound, huge books.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he had his own full-blown commercial printing facility.
Yes.
So it was not outsourced. So when you bought that book for $50, one, it's a
80% profit, yeah.
Tons of profit.
Yeah.
Plus, how much are they paying there's like one guy running the print show that's maybe making some money.
Everyone else is
apprenticing.
Yeah, it was all free labor that they had. And a lot of times it was labor that they were getting paid for.
Yeah.
Because of the apprenticeship programs.
Our parents were,
That's right.
And when I was on staff, they paid me minimum wage because they had to, like legally.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They still took out like $100 a week for room and board.
That's awesome.
Now, to be clear, after I worked my full day in the office and then I went downstairs and I ate dinner, I then had to do chores.
Right.
And I had to mop the commercial kitchen. So, still took out room and board.
You get worked to the bone. And I actually had an experience. I was sent to one of the training centers for a special program for troubled youths. Yeah. That we'll talk about that as well, because that was... Wow, I think that's probably where some of like my deepest trauma comes from.
If I had known you back then, I would have avoided you so that I wouldn't get sucked into.
Oh yeah, because I would have been a bad influence.
100%.
Yeah, because I was rebellious and prideful, and I was defrauding.
And it was you were a whore.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Put it out there.
Still are.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Wow, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. Well, it's true. But. So one of the other big rules that I know you and I have talked about this extensively, right, was centered around, and we kind of touched on it, but relationships between men and women, right, and the dating culture within the cult.
Yeah.
And that to me was, they were obsessed. ATI, IBLP, Bill Gothard, they were obsessed with sexuality.
As most super conservative religions are.
I mean, it was over the top.
I mean, it's a great way to control people.
Correct.
You know,
and that's really what it is. Too.
And what always happens is the leaders get busted.
Yep.
Doing
for
the most
deviancy,
depraved stuff that they're not allowed to do. Because some of the stuff, if you hear what Gothard was doing, now there was one thing they mentioned that I was like, wow, I don't know that I even heard that had happened. But a lot of the stuff that he did, like playing footsie in the van, or like his leg is pressing against the other girl's leg,
grooming behaviors.
You're like, oh, that doesn't seem like much. He wasn't, going all at it. It's like, no. In our culture, that's you're sent home.
Yeah.
With a scarlet letter.
If you give a side hug to a female,
there's no touching
that
females.
You're not courting, because that's what I wanted to get into. If you give that side hug, you're gonna get punished for that. You might get sent home. You might get kicked out.
Yeah.
Because that's how serious it was. And all the while, Bill Gothard is grooming these women who are minors, girls. They're not women, they're girls, minor girls. And his brother was caught up in this massive scandal that was more than just grooming. I mean, he was outright abusing.
He was a predator.
Yes, he was.
And the fun thing was, when did you learn that he had a brother?
Once I found out about the predatory behavior.
But were you in?
No. This was after the fact.
So here we have a guy who's run this whole program for 40 years. And he talks about his mom and his dad. His dad was a pastor, et cetera, whatever. Right. I never, ever once heard him mention he had a brother. I didn't know he had a brother. His brother was in leadership at the Northwoods Training Center.
Right.
I was like, his brother?
That's his brother? Well, and that was one of the things that the documentary brought out that I also didn't know. Not only that he had a brother, but also that they were pretty much relying on Gothard. Like, he supported them. He housed them. He made sure they were taken care of. So they were all living off of, in a very lavish fashion, living off of the cult.
Oh, yeah. I've got some fun stories from the training center days.
It's craziness to me. But the dating aspect of this, you weren't allowed to date.
No.
You couldn't kiss a girl before marriage, much less have premarital sex. I mean, that was just right out the window.
Good thing I got my first kissing done in kindergarten.
Starting them young.
Insane.
Weird. But yeah.
to be clear, I was also a kindergartner.
Both kindergartners. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, you were in kindergarten. It wasn't a teacher. It was a fellow kindergarten.
Oh, man. If it had been a teacher, I'd have been telling you about this a long time ago. Yes.
Very on brand for Texas, though. But yeah, so there was no physical contact even between boys and girls.
Accidental physical contact was just the best day of the year.
Oh yeah, if you accidentally got brushed against.
Yeah. You squeezed in an elevator too much.
Yeah.
You're like,
oh.
You turn it.
We're touching shoulders right now. Oh.
They are making you creepy by keeping everything so. You're just like, you're in an elevator, like you don't even know what to say.
Well, they're also making you insanely desperate.
Yes.
They're making you insanely desperate, and it fits perfectly into the courtship model, right?
Yes.
Because courtship, okay, so let's break this down for a second, because this was the endorsed dating methodology.
All right, so I'm the girl you're interested in.
Okay.
And Josh is my dad.
Okay. All right.
What happens?
I go to Josh, your dad, to let him know, Mr. Cavaza, I am interested in your beautiful bearded daughter here. I would like to pursue a relationship with her with the intention of getting married.
Weren't you the kid that was in
Hey, whoa. No, none of that's true. Those are all rumors.
Do I have any input in this?
Well, me and Bill are like this, so I'm going to ask Bill and we're going to find out.
You're just going to find out from Gothard, yeah.
Yep.
But if
Mr. Gothard, you would see you're obviously a fake dad.
No, I'm at the top.
You're at the top.
Me and Bill are like the I'm
you
his
guys are
other
tight.
brother. He doesn't even didn't even know that.
If I have blonde hair and curls, he's going to say no. He needs to come to headquarters.
That's right. But she needs to come to headquarters.
Yes.
But yeah, perfect point that Bryce made there. The girl had no say in it whatsoever. I could have been this just dog ugly creep, talk to the dad. The dad's like, seems valid. Yeah, checks out.
I think this is also another one of those areas where it's going to be wildly varied, where there's going to be a majority of people that they were really serious and really like, we're going down the courtship path. And yes, the woman's going to have very little say.
Yeah.
And here's the other part of it. It's not that if she had a protest, if she didn't want to do this, but if this guy that was being put forth fit into what they thought and were looking for, she wouldn't protest because it's like, well, this is what's supposed to happen.
This is what we were indoctrinated for.
Yeah. She's like, okay, well, this is happening now. Cool.
Well, my dad is the head of the household. I have to operate under my umbrella of authority, right? My dad is the family leader. Mom's subservient to the dad. Children are subservient to the dad. So if dad thinks that this is the right idea, well, then I got to line up under that umbrella, because if I drift out from underneath that umbrella of authority,
God's will. Then you're not in God's will.
I'm probably I'll probably just disappear off the earth.
Just burn. You'll burn. You'll be a forever whatever. It's just, there's so much emphasis and shame and things put. You have to be in God's will, and if anything bad happens to you at all, if anything bad, then you are obviously not under the umbrella of authority.
That's it.
Period.
Correct.
No wiggle room.
That's exactly right. Anything bad that happened in life was either a test, a trial for you to,
build
make it through and build character and come out better, right? Or it was your fault.
Yeah.
It was ultimately your fault.
And if you were a female and you told your dad, like, I'm not interested in that guy, I don't like him, he's like, well, this is who God has brought forth, and if this isn't, if you don't like him, then you've done something to upset God, that he's given you this man instead of the man of your dreams.
But also a lot of times, everyone, like I said, was so desperate.
Oh, true.
This is an escape. Now I can actually live my own life and be independent. So yeah, I'll take whatever's available.
And that really blows up. It
does.
One of the things that Davey and I also talked about, it's like, yes, our experiences are different and our trauma is different.
Right.
We acknowledge it's not nearly as bad as a lot of the people we
Correct.
see. But if you really want to put another perspective, it doesn't matter how bad your perspective was, we were still guys. Mm-hmm. All of the girls definitely had it worse.
Absolutely.
The pressure that they were under for what they were supposed to be and do, which is, if you think about it, it's kind of weird, because you would think there'd be a lot of pressure, like, you got to be the man of the house, you got to run a business and blah, blah. I didn't get any of that. Yeah. No, I was like, follow the Lord's will and get a wife that
find a good wife. Yeah. That was pretty much it, right? But yeah, the women in this cult, I can't even imagine what they experienced. Yeah. And obviously I have secondhand experiences from, some friends that I have that are female that were in this cult, and they were just, horrifically abused. Not always physically, but psychologically,
yes,
emotionally. It was intense for them.
Well, I keep thinking of things as we talk, but so there's a lot of leadership all throughout the institute, because Gothard's only one man.
Right.
And he pretty much was at headquarters. And then if he wasn't at headquarters, he was traveling around and doing this and that. But there was a lot of facilities out there that were their own micro kingdoms of hell.
Correct.
And you could have an okay time if you were good friends and close to whatever dictator had totally cozied up to Gothard and pretended to be what they wanted. And then Gothard said, well, you're going to be our director.
Right.
And then he leaves without any oversight, and that person becomes just an absolute nightmare to be under.
A tyrant.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of that.
Yes.
And it was just the extreme of a lot of these beliefs that the people had that made it, almost impossible to live.
Well, Davey, when you wanted to get a position, did they, look at your resume and consider if you were qualified to do that kind of administration?
Of course not.
What about a qualified to run like a commercial kitchen that had to cook for 80 to 200 people a day?
Didn't matter.
Maintenance, where you need to have some sort of electrical license.
Who do you know, and how bright does your face appear to me?
How many children do you have that can work in the department for free?
Yeah. And that was, they, like we said, these training centers were primarily staffed by volunteers, and they were run by families that lived at the training centers.
Yeah, these are families that either A, for whatever reason, had lost a job, and they were like, okay, we'll just serve the ministry, which means practically free housing. Mm-hmm. You guys are going to work to the bone and be monitored all the time. But
it was like a prison.
Yeah. Prison, but free housing. So it's like, okay, well, I can do this. Mm-hmm. Or some people left actual good paying jobs to work in the ministry.
Yes, exactly. Because everyone was supposed to be a minister in the cult.
Yes.
And if your job was taking away, if your source of income was taking away from that, well, that means that you just you weren't Christian enough, quite honestly. You didn't love God enough to give that up so that you could devote everything to the cult.
Yep. You're being worldly. Yeah. And another, I mean, it's not like he ever required, sell all your possessions, give them me the money, and blah, blah, blah. He never said any of that stuff.
Right.
It wasn't even really implied, but like if you went to work for the ministry, you just sold your house and
moved into one of the training centers.
Into one of the training centers, plenty of room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even the training center that I went to, it was run by a family. The director of the training center, he was actually a really nice guy. But yeah, they'd given up their entire life to go and run this compound.
Yeah.
Massive compound. But yeah, so the experiences that a lot of us have had in this cult, like you said, they vary drastically, but at its core was this extreme version of fundamental Christianity. And it was so damaging to so many people. There's still friends, fortunately you and I have moved on from a lot of the trauma, right? And maybe it's because our trauma wasn't quite as severe.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that then this is a fundamental difference between you and I, is like you had a very strong will. They never broke you.
Right.
I went into this program pre-broken.
Yeah.
Like he's ready.
Yeah.
Here you go. Do what you will.
He's clay in your hands.
Exactly. I got in line and I'm like, here we go. Cause I do not want to get the wrath of my mother. So I am not going to shame my parents. I never got in trouble.
You never got in trouble.
I don't think I did. I really can't remember a single time when I was in trouble.
Wow. Okay. That's actually pretty impressive because I feel like everyone got in trouble at some point, but maybe that was just the experience that I had and the people that I was surrounded by because I was already in trouble.
Yeah. You showed up in trouble.
In trouble. Yeah.
I worked my way onto staff, and then the last couple of years on staff, I started to do things because I knew the rounds, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the projector into my room and I'm gonna watch The Matrix for 100th time because I got 2 DVDs and that's one of them, baby.
Well, that thing backwards and forwards. Like I know Pistol Pete Maravich backwards and forwards. But yeah, all these beliefs that were essentially dictated by Bill Gothard at the center of the cult. It created this environment that was perfect for just blatant abuse across the board.
Yes.
Financial abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse,
physical, everything.
Everything, dude. And that's exactly what happened. And ultimately, that's what brought down Gothard. And we're going to get into that whole saga in another one of the episodes here. But he ultimately was brought down.
This whole ministry was supposed to keep going strong. It was going to be even more powerful. There was going to be more money coming in because we all went through it, and we were all going to go get married, and we were all going to have our 5 to 18 children, and then we're going to put more money into it, and it's just going to balloon.
It was this giant pyramid scheme.
Except some of us got out, and we were like, "Oh, beer's good."
Yeah, I like girls. I
like girls.
Or boys, maybe.
Or yeah, I like physical contact.
Yeah, I like to enjoy my life.
Music.
I don't want to be subservient forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was just very dark and sinister what was happening this whole time. And a lot of times you didn't even realize it because it's the only thing you knew.
Exactly. My mom once told me after all this, she was like, if it was so bad, why didn't you say anything? And I was just like, because I was in God's will. Yeah. I was doing what God wanted, which was what you wanted.
Yes.
And if I had gotten in trouble, I don't know about you. I mean, you were in trouble, but my mom, I don't even know what would have happened. My mom was pretty strict, and she would not, if I had shamed her I don't want to think about it.
See, and my parents, they were very, very strict for sure. But I still, to this day, I still have an amazing relationship with my parents because we were able to move on from a lot of that stuff.
And this is such a weird flip-flop. So, like, he grew up super strict, no movies, no TV shows, blah, blah, blah. I had it the other way around, and I'm currently barely talking to my parents. Hang on, I got to shame my mom for
Okay.
Sorry, Mom.
So this documentary, and you know, the next episode, we're going to get even deeper into life at the training centers because that's really where the crux of it was.
How long were you there?
I was at the Indianapolis Training Center I was supposed to be there for 6 months. I got kicked out after 2 months.
And then how many more after that?
0. I wasn't allowed
So we're
back.
going to talk about my life at training center.
Bryce's experience.
2 years in Oklahoma City and 1 year in Australia. It's going to be a good time, y'all.
I wrote some questions down.
You've got some questions? Well, I also wanted to briefly mention about the documentary. There are a lot of people, a lot of ex-cult members that are featured in the documentary. And Josh, I've got a couple pictures here. One of those, one of the women that's featured in the documentary is a lady named Laura Smith.
Oh, yes.
She is featured heavily. They interview her. She talks a lot about her experience, some of the abuse that she went through. This is actually a lady that I had a romantic engagement with for a brief period of time. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well, because seeing her in this documentary brought back so much for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't meet her until after I was already out of the cult. So that makes it very interesting as well. And there's another lady that you knew personally, yes. Bryce. This is Lindsay Williams, yes. Right? She's also featured extremely prominently in the documentary, and I think you actually worked with her at one of the training centers.
A little bit, I worked with her. Mm-hmm. The Laura I met after, when those of us that were out of the, it's not that we were out of the program so much as that we were now adults and we were working because we wanted to have like a car and money and stuff. And
you needed to survive.
And then we would connect with other people so that we would have people to talk to, and they weren't like, oh, so where did you go to high school? Like, oh, crap.
Well,
let me make something up here. Where are we? Not something close. So I met Laura, and like we hung out with her and some other people briefly.
Yeah.
Lindsay, I knew from here in Texas, and we worked at one of the seminars. She was in the Children's Institute.
Okay.
I was in the Children's Institute, but they took one look at me and they're like, you can hand out materials. Do not let him in charge of the children.
To the kids.
He needs to give it away from the children.
So
I think he's seen Adam Sandler movies. We don't need this type of influence.
This guy's definitely watched Big Daddy. He's out.
Bad.
So we're going to get into the relationship that I had with Laura Smith, who's featured in the documentary, and then we'll talk a little bit about Lindsay as well as some of the other people that are part of this documentary that I didn't know personally, but I'm familiar with. And then as well, some of the additional stuff that came out after the fact with the Recovering Grace website, which is mentioned in the documentary that you actually introduced me to, Bryce. I didn't know anything about it. And you said, have you heard of this website? And it is explosive.
The guy that started that website, I know very well.
That's is it John Cornish?
Dr. John Cornish?
Dr. John Cornish. Excuse me.
He's one of the most fantastic piano players.
Oh, well, that's cool. And he started this insane website. Well, I shouldn't say insane. The stories on it are insane. Yeah. It's just, it's a lot. I can't read most of the stories on that website hard. Because it's just so brutal.
When it first came out, I was like, this was going on?
Yeah.
We're just like, I was in the dark. I had no idea.
And see, the interactions that I had with Laura, the experiences that I had at Indianapolis, back up a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because Laura said a lot of the same stuff to me before this documentary ever came out.
Yeah.
And I experienced it firsthand, living in Indianapolis for 2 months. Producer Josh, you taking some notes?
Yep.
I'd love to hear what some of your questions are.
Not notes, just questions.
Oh, just questions. Okay.
When did you realize you were in a cult? At what age?
I didn't realize until after the fact. I knew it was a religious organization. I knew I didn't like it, but it wasn't until I was so I left the cult when I was 18, And I think it was probably like maybe like a year or two later, so like 19 or 20, that I was like, I was in a cult.
When did you start sinning hard?
Sinning hard?
23.
No, like 14.
Yeah. So
14.
I said that just as another difference in our experiences. I did not have my first sip of alcohol until 28.
Yeah.
So like I got out of this whole thing and I maintained the standards to a degree.
Yeah.
For a long time. I fought hard against my impulses and be like, no, I gotta, this is what I was
Well, because
raised.
you're still racked with the guilt and shame.
Yeah. No,
right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it's a really weird thing coming to realize that how you were raised was just so foreign and in a lot of instances just wrong. I think when I realized that I was in a cult, Josh, is when I was describing my upbringing to someone. They were like, "Oh, you were in a cult?" I was like, "What?" Yeah, I guess I was.
I honestly don't know if I thought about it as a cult until the Recovering Grace website.
Yeah.
Honestly. And I was just like reading that stuff. This is wild.
Yeah, it's insane.
Followed by shame. I was a part of this.
What's a DC talk tape?
Decent Christian rap.
Oh yeah, dude. They were the coolest of the cool in Christian rock music.
Yeah. Yeah, I could still sing some of them. I'm not going to.
Yeah. I mean, they had some bangers, dude.
They and a couple. I mean, they were skilled musicians. They could sing.
Toby Mac.
Toby Mac. He went on to do other things.
He was the real deal. Yeah, he did. Look him up.
How old were you when they stole your hat and you cried?
Gosh, man, it was like 12 or 13. And that honestly was a church mission trip. It wasn't part of the Institute.
Oh, okay.
Because we went to a public swimming pool in Piedras Negras, and I just I'll just leave my shoes and hat in the locker room, and they'll be fine.
But you got to go to a public swimming pool and see women in bikinis?
Yes.
Woo, buddy.
Yes.
What percentage was white people?
Oh, the overwhelming majority. Overwhelming majority. I mean, it was funny because I was watching one of the ATI promotional videos, and it featured a family of color, and I was like, I never saw them.
I did.
You did?
So I was in the Character First pilot project, and that was like a 2-phase thing. And the second phase, we acquired some new students, ATI students, to be a part of that. And they were black. we went out and found a black family. Yeah. And we're like, because we were teaching in public schools in Oklahoma City, which is predominantly not white.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And so they were like, Now they brought to attention that was not why they had been brought in. And we're like,
are you sure? So the program that I was in, hilarious. The program that I was in, so this was a program for troubled youths, right? Specifically boys. And so it was essentially a rehab program for us to go and get reprogrammed to fall in line with the Institute principles, right? And there was another guy in this program, and bless his heart, he was a black kid, very tall and very, very mentally challenged. Like special needs. But no one really acknowledged that.
No.
And so he was sent to this rehabilitation program with actual criminals. And he's this poor special needs guy. But I remember his name was Jelani, and we were working on a project, one of the projects that Brandon talked about, where we had to essentially renovate new facilities. And I felt someone walk up behind me. And at the time, this is when I was 16, so I was already, 6'1", 6'2", whatever height I am. I feel someone walk up behind me, and I don't know what's going on. And I spin around because I think, what is someone about to try to fight me or something? So I spin around, and it's Jelani standing behind me just doing this, trying to figure out if he's as tall as I am or taller. It's like, how tall are you, Dave? Like, Jelani, don't sneak up behind me like that. All right, buddy?
All right, 2 more questions.
Okay.
Did the Matrix break your spell of the cult?
Did you realize you were living in a simulation at that point?
I was hoping that I started doing this a lot.
Looking for the plug?
Could you load something new, please? I've heard of this place called Vegas. I don't know.
Bill Gothard was just Agent Smith the whole time.
Yeah. Last question. How do I join the cult?
How does Josh join the cult? Well, good news, it's still around.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, even though Gothard got taken down, the cult is still around.
You're going to have to drive to Big Sandy.
Yeah.
Because that's where the conference is, because only about 100 families are showing up these days.
And quite honestly, Josh, you need to have a lot more kids.
Man.
You need to have a lot more kids, dude.
But this isn't the one where you can have like multiple wives, right?
No, there's not polygamy necessarily.
How far away were we from like...
Oh, I think that would have been like a progression.
It would have started with, okay, if you want the daughter, you do need to bring some goats or a small Toyota.
Yeah. The dowry.
And then we'll talk about maybe having...
No, you know what would have happened?
I would do that. Hey, give me a Corolla and you can have her.
I feel like all we needed was one training center leader to essentially, say, hey, I'm going to take an additional wife, and here's why it is an acceptable biblical principle.
Well, it would have started with, I was fasting for a week. And I had a revelation.
Yeah.
God told me that I need to have Cindy, bring Cindy. Yes, she's my secretary. It's fine. She's 16. She's going to be my new wife.
Yeah.
My other wife, she can't have children anymore. So,
she's broken now.
We gotta keep this wheel
like
spinning.
7 more.
Exactly. Something like that's not.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to you with notes on that, Josh, so that I can get you initiated in real quick.
We're joking, but we're not. I feel like that was not that far off.
The other thing that we're gonna talk about a little bit in the next episode, Bryce, is you actually let me know that one of the couples that they feature very heavily in the documentary that was essentially a protagonist, I think, in the documentary, like kind of talking about how Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar were, just really having a hard time and kind of being dishonest. And this couple that they interviewed, they are now in a world of trouble. I think that it's Jim Holt. And
yeah. He's like, oh, I was his best friend, and then he started being all weird, and then he betrayed me, and blah blah blah. And then I saw that link, and I was like, oh, this guy's also an asshole.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, and they didn't talk about that in the documentary at all. There wasn't even a follow-on to it.
I was very curious. And
this just came out on June 2nd.
Yeah. It's like, and they're together, but they're not actually husband and wife. They're separated, and they're like, there's legal things. And I'm like,
there's a restraining order in place now.
How big was the check?
Yeah, exactly. Come
on, Amazon.
So we'll come back. We'll talk about Laura Smith. We'll talk about Lindsay. We'll talk about Jim Holt. And most importantly, we're going to talk about these experiences at the training center and how deep that really goes.
And I'm going to be laying on the couch.
Yeah, for this one, we might need a therapist in the studio, Josh. Just letting you know, because there's high propensity for a breakdown here.
Yeah.
But
I
we'll
just
be back.
need you to sign a doctor's note. This is technically therapy, and I'm going to file it with my insurance.
But thank y'all for watching, and stay tuned. We'll be back with more. Thanks.